OTB.
Over the age of 40, we can lose significant muscle mass and strength every year. But staying active and eating a healthy, balanced diet with good quality protein can help. John West No Drain Tuna Range is naturally high in protein to support muscle maintenance. Visit johnwest.ie to find tasty, protein-packed recipes which you can enjoy every day. John West. Eat strong, go strong.
When it comes to herding up the latest news, views and reviews on farming in Ireland, nobody does it like the Farming Independent. Chasing down key stories, trends and topics from the ever-changing world of farming and agri in Ireland. So pick up the Farming Independent every Tuesday and get the lay of the land. Up close and independent.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Sky. Watch every single live Premier League game on Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports.
You're welcome back. Monday Night Rugby on the way after 8 o'clock. Jerry Thornley, Matt Williams on the way. We'll be talking to Pat Nevin just after 9 o'clock. Bit of boxing in the next hour as well. So let's turn to the GAA in the meantime. Billy Joe Padden with us. Hey, Billy Joe.
How are things, Joe?
I'd say in that weather over the weekend, you really missed it, did you?
You know me, Joe. I was absolutely delighted that I was no longer playing, considering those conditions. I actually, I really felt sorry for some of particularly my ex-teammates having to go out in that.
Several matches obviously succumbed to the conditions and were called off. I think quite a few were debatable and probably shouldn't have gone ahead.
Yeah, I think that's always the case. I think when you have a congested schedule, I think everyone does their absolute best and maybe pushes it a little further than they should to try and get the fixtures played, because it's such a tight window to try and get all these games played out. So hopefully there were no serious injuries that you could put down to bad conditions.
No, I don't think there were. I just think in terms of what to take from the games, they were just such a free-for-all, and there was chaos, and the wind was a factor, the ball wasn't bouncing. I mean, it was kind of hard to know what you were actually watching, particularly on Sunday. I guess Croke Park on Saturday evening, we got a very, a game in the truest sense without stormy conditions. Although that was as kind of soggy as I can remember seeing Croke Park, which gave us a sense of things. So Dublin 12 points, Mayo 2-11, 5-point win for Mayo. They were 3 points up at half-time. We'll come to Mayo in a second. I guess a theme of our early conversations has been the dubs, obviously. So where were the dubs on Saturday in comparison with the performances against Kerry and Armagh?
Not much further along, Joe. I was expecting them to see a significant improvement, and we didn't really see it. Like they are improving. You saw the last time we spoke, Joe. I mentioned that you wanted to see more from Fenton and from Kilkenny, and you got that. They were much improved. They were influential right throughout the game, particularly those two players. They led from the front and played hard all the way through the full 70 minutes, and that's what you want from your star performers. I think that you just have not seen the progression that Desi would like in terms of the younger players taking the game by the scruff of the neck, really making a positive impact in these situations. And that can be down to just not having enough experience. It can be difficult, when you've only played 2 or 3 times. You could be as well still be in a heavy training load that Dublin are in. And I don't think it's panic stations by any stretch of it, but they really, really need to start picking up points quickly, because it's important for young players like that. It's not important for Fenton or Kilkenny, but it's important for those young players that they stay in Division 1. They don't want their confidence knocked to be saying that they were part of maybe the first time in God knows how long that Dublin got relegated to Division 2. They want to, walk away from this campaign, be able to park it, look forward to Division 1 football next year and look forward to a Leinster Championship and try and improve.
In particular, what would worry you the most from a Dubs point of view?
I think there's a lot to worry about, but I think at both ends, Dublin for long periods were the best team close to the opposition goal, and they were really good close to their own goal. They just didn't create the scoring opportunities. I know they created 1 goal chance, I think, in the first half. Robbie Henley made a good save, and then on numerous occasions they conceded 2 goals and could have conceded many more. So there are areas for concern there at all, either side of the field. In many ways, it's nearly easier to fix issues that happen in front of your own goal because you can play defensively. They're very used to getting lots of bodies behind the ball in the past over the last number of years. They've been very patient defensively, whereas the thing that's nearly most surprising and probably more worrying is the fact that they haven't just been able to create these scoring chances, haven't been able to get some of these young forwards up and running sooner.
And the really interesting question, which is difficult to answer, is whether that's to do with the quality of player coming through or whether it's to do with the coaching, or it may well most likely be a combination. But certainly you watch Dublin now in attack, and before there was such certainty and authority and such a clear plan, and they had various options, and moves were synced up so beautifully, and the whole thing just had an awesome quality to it at times. It now looks stagnant, and they're running out of ideas against teams for whatever reason, and nothing is quite in sync. Runs aren't timed well off each other. There was a moment on 64 minutes where Scully kicked a very poor wide, and Eamon Fitzmaurice on the TV coverage said, well, okay, it's a 9th wide for Dublin. I guess if you're looking for a point of optimism, you could say, well, the wides are fixable. Now, wides have been a real trend the last 3 games, and bad wides at that. But he did say the big issue for me is there is no chemistry in this Dublin forward line at the moment, none. And it's staggering to watch how that's just dissipated after a decade.
Yes, but I can understand it. Dublin were so patient, so coordinated. Everyone seemed to know exactly what the other player was doing. In many ways, they were like a forward unit like we'd never seen before, where they were happy to go through 3, 4, 5, 6 passing movements. Everyone knew what they were doing to create that opportunity, maybe on the other side of the field. Whereas when you've younger players into the squad, they're not going to get to that level of understanding of the game plan. And I just think sometimes that instead of then trying to focus on continuing to go through those measures, and it looks like you're not willing to let a young player go and take a chance. So what if you make a mistake? Sometimes those are the things you learn from. I think Dublin needed to be more direct. I think they needed to be more chaotic in some ways. In that, if you remember maybe Dublin of 7 or 8 years ago, they were all out attack. They could be caught out going the other way. Jim Gavin made them very, very cautious at times, but they were, practically unbeatable. Whereas now, I think in order to get some of these young forwards up and running, they just have to be more direct. They have to give them more freedom, more license to go and take things on, try and take their men on. You don't see a Dublin player really taking his man on in the forward attack. I understand that was very difficult in the conditions in Croke Park.
But a rare exception. Kieran Kilkenny did it. Sometimes he just said, well, sod this, there's nothing on, I'll do it.
And I think that license needs to be given to all those forwards. You need to be able to feel comfortable playing a ball in front of the square. Everything seems to had to be 80-20 in their favour to play it, whereas Mayo got success on the game that it was out of at best, some of the balls that were played at the forward line were 60-40, 50-50s, and they were able to create something out of those. I just think that Dublin, from an attacking sense, to get some of those young players going, it's understandable that they're not as efficient and not as coordinated as the teams of the past, but they have the athleticism. I believe they have the raw footballing ability. They have potential. Let them go out and try and make something happen. So what if they make mistakes?
Okay, that's very interesting. So almost that's a more accessible game plan for a bunch of young players coming through. And look, let's get them in and have a crack that way, and then we can build the more methodical approach, which Gavin, in fairness, built upon year after year after year. But if the hope is that they're going to pitch up and suddenly mimic what took maybe a decade to arrive at for the previous generation, it's not going to happen. So let them in there and have a bit more of a cut, almost less pre-programmed.
I think so. I think they need to be more direct. I think what that will give you is you have to give young players like that freedom to make mistakes. No one is going to expect that the Dublin forward line that played against Mayo on Saturday night is going to be the Dublin forward line that plays in the championship. They're going to get a couple more experienced players back into that, whether it's Costello, Con O'Callaghan, players like that, Paddy Small, going to come back into that area. What Dublin need to find is 2 or 3 of these young players that come in, get a bit of confidence from this league campaign, kick a couple of scores, and then they can use that experiences that's around them in those championship games and learn, okay, well, this is what we do in these situations. I don't take my man on, I recycle. I know that Kilkenny's going to make this move, I make this move off him, and I help him out in that way. So that's the way they're going to learn. It's going to take a step-by-step process. But young players can't learn and can't improve if they don't have the confidence and if they don't have the freedom to go and do something.
By the way, just again, because I'm so fascinated by the Dubs thing at the moment, I'm almost taking minute-by-minute notes during the game, and I just had one about 90 seconds in. The odd moment off throw-in where the set move or whatever happened off throw-in works a treat, and Diarmuid O'Connor kicks the point. But minute 35, Brian Howard has a free just outside the D. The game is just started settling down, and I don't think I've seen him or any Dublin player do this before from just outside his own D. As the free, he just skies it in the air just past halfway and it's a 50-50 in the middle of the field. I don't know what the logic is there. Is this what Dessie Farrell wants them to do?
No, I don't think so. I think that was just one of those things where he made a really, really bad decision, an out of character decision for him, because you're so good in possession. I think that you can put that down to, particularly from a player like Brian Howard, who has experience, who has a lot of ability as a kick passer as well, that forcing it. To me, that's just forcing it, trying to make things happen when you know you're not playing at your best, trying to do too much, whereas, playing the percentages in that situation was the right play. But I just think that he was guilty of that, and some of the other players have been guilty of it so far as well. You mentioned earlier on Niall Scully missing scores. I think he maybe had 2 that he would normally have kicked in his sleep, and that's just maybe that little bit of extra pressure when things aren't going your way.
It is very interesting. Like Sean Bugler was guilty of bad wides against Armagh. He hasn't stopped shooting. So you kind of wonder, are they saying, well, look, keep going, it's going to come, or if maybe the message isn't getting through? These are the interesting questions at the moment.
Yeah, and Bugler, I think, has been has been pretty lively. I thought he was pretty decent in the first half against Kerry as well. He had an opportunity as well in the first half against Mayo where he went for a shot and really he had 2 men inside him and should have put it through the hands. Yeah. And that's the sort of thing he needs to learn, and they have to just be more efficient in those aspects of the game. Now, when you look at those mistakes, Sean Bugler's trying to make something happen. As a player, that's all you can ask him. It's coaching that needs to take over after that and say, well, look, where's your learning experience from that? Where can you improve? Go back and look at the video. What were you thinking when you had the ball in that situation? You had runners inside, and be more cognizant of that next time you find yourself in that situation.
Yeah. I mean, it's worth stating, I don't think we'd be as harsh on any other group of players in the country because they have just set such a standard. I mean, so it's a little unfair to pick out individuals. I do appreciate. As for Mayo, what are we saying?
Well, I think some of the things that are proven very, very difficult for Dublin, and they are very difficult. When you look at Mayo, you have to give James Horan absolutely huge credit again. Since he's been back a second time round, and even when you look at his first term, bringing young players into the squad and being able to bring them up to speed so quickly that they can perform efficiently against a team like Dublin in Croke Park. And when you look through the Mayo squad, you've Donnacha McHugh playing a role, Rory Brickenden did well, Paul Towie, Aidan Orme, Jack Carney, all players with very limited experience, and James Horan has been able to get them up to speed to such a level that they perform efficiently and well enough to ensure that Mayo get a league victory in Croke Park. And I think that's the most positive thing for Mayo coming out of the win on Saturday night. Not minding any of this other stuff about beating Dublin or the sort of grudge element of that. That's a nonsense, because we're going to see a different Dublin later on in the season. That's the most positive thing for Mayo, is that James Horan has been continually been able to add more young talent to the squad, considering that the injuries they've been having to deal with as well. And that was very impressive. And if I could pick one out, it would be Aidan Orme, because he's a really good footballer. I was curious to see how he would get on in terms of being able to win his own ball, and he did an exceptional job of that in close to goal in a situation where you don't have Cillian O'Connor, you obviously have Tommy Conroy out for the season. He probably maybe would have preferred to spend more time out around the half forward line, but he did a really, really good job, worked his goal well, got a good score, will be disappointed he didn't get another one, and competed all through the night. That's a huge positive for Mayo when you consider that the difficulties Mayo have had with bringing forwards up to speed. And then when you add him to Ryan O'Donoghue, who's already there, Jason Doherty, who's come back from the injury problems, and Cillian O'Connor coming back, James Horan's done a great job at I suppose, bringing all these players up to speed, as the way I describe it.
To the extent that actually the bench really copper fastened the win, not least Aidan O'Shea.
Yeah, and you mentioned as well, you didn't have O'Hora or Paddy Durkin. We mentioned Cillian O'Connor. You looked at first time maybe ever that you'd look at a Mayo game against Dublin, and you think that the strength is on the bench. Aidan O'Shea has made a real positive contribution each time he's come off the bench, particularly in the way the game I expected to. The flow of these games over the course of the summer, there will be room, I suppose, for that physical presence around the middle of the field. There'll be a lot of 50-50 balls to be won at the latter stages of games, and maybe that'll be his role for the summer, and he's performed it very effectively. But I think when you look at experienced players, Diarmuid O'Connor was an exceptional player for Mayo for through the early part of his career. Had, maybe his form had dipped slightly in the last couple of years, but on the evidence of last Saturday, he's back to his very, very best. Put in a really strong performance, not finding himself on the periphery of things, which maybe he has done out on the wings, in the middle of the field, using his game intelligence, created those goals, both goal scoring opportunities, through his skill and know-how. And then when you add the fact that you get Oisín Mullen, not going to Australia, and Matty Ruan back into that middle third area where they're elite athletes, and that adds something really, really big to Mayo in terms of the ability to play at a high tempo in the middle third and move the ball out of there. I think those two players were responsible for 3 points from playing the first half.
Yeah, Jimmy O'Connor at that Newbridge or nowhere game was absolutely phenomenal. And I think if he's in line for those kind of performances this season, then things could get very interesting for Mayo without bringing up the dreaded question of the usual. And there was a moment as well on 57 minutes where Oisín Mullen effectively looks like he's broken his ankle and he's screaming, and like 20 minutes later he's still like grimacing but like giving it socks in the warm down. I just wanted someone to say, Oisín, you're coming off. You're just, because I don't think there's much quit in that man somehow.
No, and every Mayo supporter was obviously very concerned when they saw him go down. You kind of think, geez, how can this happen with so many injuries? But he was able to keep going. I think James Horan made a really good decision to take him and Matty Ruan off, considering that they haven't played much football yet this season and had put in such big shifts and covered such ground. But it's that ability that he has, the pace that he has to move you through the middle third so quickly. Like what we've seen from Lee Keegan, Paddy Durkin in the past. He's just another one of those types of players, and it's really exciting for Mayo supporters to see what he can do.
So all our points about the conditions and how early we are in the season, notwithstanding, and all the big names missing. I know you didn't see the Kerry game in full, but they were very impressive again. Donegal far less so. Is there a bit of a pecking order starting to emerge in your mind?
Not really. I don't think so. I think Kerry are probably the most settled out of all the teams that are there. So you'd have to. I can understand if people make them favourites at this stage when you consider the leadership and the attacking power they have up front in O'Shea and Clifford. Now they're a tandem that are no other county can match. But as I said, I'm going to be late to this Dublin team's funeral. I've said that before. I still think Dublin can have a big say in what will happen later on in the season. Tyrone are All-Ireland champions, obviously don't have a whole lot of work done at this stage. Kerry are in the best position, but a lot can change between now and then. And I think we're looking forward to a really exciting championship where it's probably the most even we've had in such a long time. And it may come down in a condensed season where the championship games are going to be played off in a short period of time. Injuries, suspensions, just form can maybe even have a bigger role to play than maybe in past championships. Yeah,
it's fantastic. I mean, you really miss this sense in January, February, March as we head into a season going, God, I don't know. This is really finely balanced. It could be any of a few. I do like as well how in our 3 chats now around these 3 rounds, we've come on and spent the majority going, honestly, Dublin are a disgrace. They're abysmal. They're shocking. But at the end of it, we say, I'm not writing them off. I'm not writing them off.
Well, maybe I am like that because as a Mayo supporter, I've been scarred for so long. So I definitely don't want to write them off. But no, I still think Dublin get their best team out. There's still so many good players. There's so much know-how there. They're playing in Croke Park, so much athleticism. But it's getting more and more difficult. It will be more and more difficult for them, if they don't really turn it round shortly.
Surely, yeah. Newbridge next. I mean, again, it's so interesting.
And difficult place to go. Huge, massive atmosphere. It'd be a great ticket to have to go to that one, and it'll be difficult for them. But sometimes your season can turn on victories like that if they can get one.
Okay, Billy Joe, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
You're welcome, Joe.
Off the Ball on News Talk.
Guaranteed Irish business members continue